So there's this fisherman named Syracuse just doing his thing, pulling up his nets, when bam, he hauls up a whole human woman instead of fish. For a second, he freaks out thinking she's dead, but nope, she's alive. He helps her breathe, gets her to cough up all the water, and wraps her in a blanket. But here's the weird part, she's totally chill about it, like she thought she was dead for real. Syracuse, being the decent guy he is, tells her they're going to the hospital, but she's not having it. She flat out refuses to see a doctor or anyone really. And when another boat passes by, she ducks down, hiding like she's got some big secret. When he asks for her name, she just shrugs and says she doesn't remember. He figures she must have hit her head or something. Since she's clearly not a fan of hospitals or people, he takes her to his late mom's abandoned house, super isolated, perfect hideout vibes. He gives her his lunch, checks if she'll be okay alone, and when she says yes, like it's no big deal, he's a little surprised but heads out anyway. Next, he picks up his daughter, Annie, for her dialysis appointment. She's disabled, so he carries her around. While they chat, he asks her if anything strange or wonderful has happened to her lately, because that's what he's always hoping for in life. Something magical. She just laughs and asks him why he's always like this. During dialysis, Annie wants a story, so he starts telling her one about a fisherman who pulled a woman from the sea. Annie, being smart as heck, asks if the woman was a mermaid or a selkie. Syracuse is like, not sure. After the hospital, Syracuse gets Annie a motorized wheelchair to help her get around. When he drops her off, his ex-wife drops some bad news. Annie needs a kidney transplant, but they still haven't found a donor. Rough. Later, he heads back to the mystery woman, half convinced he imagined the whole thing. But nope, she's still there, casually waiting. She asks why he looks so surprised, and he admits he was kind of expecting her to vanish like a dream. Now, here's where things get even weirder. She asks if she can go fishing with him, but he's like, it's bad luck to have a woman on a boat. Then, realizing that's a dumb rule, he lets her come along anyway. At first, his luck is terrible. He's pulling up empty traps left and right. But then, she tells him to call her Ondine, which she says is the name of a woman who came from the sea. Intriguing, right? Then she starts singing this haunting, otherworldly song, and boom, his lobster traps are suddenly full. Syracuse is shook. He tests it out, throws in an empty trap without her singing, gets nothing. Then he asks her to sing again, and suddenly his traps are overflowing with lobsters. She's literally bringing him luck. After their crazy good catch, he tells her they're gonna sell the lobsters and she'll get a cut for her singing, but she refuses to go into town. She doesn't want anyone to see her. When he points out that he has seen her, she just says, "Yeah, well, you're the only one who gets to." So, Syracuse goes alone, sells the lobsters, and buys her a dress with the money, all. He even steals some underwear for her, because, well, she clearly needs clothes. Later, he meets up with Annie at school and continues his story about the fisherman and the woman from the sea. When he mentions how her singing attracts lobsters, Annie is 100% convinced she's a selkie. Selkies, according to myth, are these magical sea creatures, half woman, half seal, who shed their seal skins when they come to land. Ondine might not be human after all. So Ondine isn't just some random girl from the sea. Turns out her singing is actually her way of talking to sea creatures. Wild, right? She starts asking Syracuse about the fisherman in his little story, and he's like, that's me. She doesn't totally buy it and kind of keeps an eye on him as he leaves. When he gets back to his mom's old house, Ondine is there trying on some old shoes, but, funny thing, she has no idea how to tie laces. Strange. Anyway, he gives her the dress he bought, and she kisses him as a thank you. Smooth move. He asks how long she's staying, and she tells him that depends on him. His response? Well, in that case, stay forever. Annie sees the whole thing from a distance, and you just know she's going to do some digging. Speaking of which, Syracuse heads to church to confess his sins, mostly about being a recovering alcoholic and wanting to get Annie away from her mom, who still drinks. The priest offers a counselor, but Syracuse isn't into it. Then he casually admits to stealing women's underwear for Ondine, obviously, and the priest is just like, this is going in a weird direction, man. Back at the house, Ondine ditches the underwear because why not? And goes for a swim. As she emerges from the water, Annie is waiting for her, grinning like, aha, knew it. Annie totally believes Ondine is a selkie, a mythical half-woman, half-seal, and she's got the research to back it up. She even asks Ondine if she has magic powers and if she can heal her kidney failure. Ondine looks kind of thrown off and says she doesn't know what she's talking about, but Annie isn't buying it. She breaks it down. Selkies live on land for 7 years if they bury their seal coats, and during that time, they cry 7 tears. Ondine has already shed one. Meanwhile, Syracuse goes to the library to read up on selkies, only to find out Annie checked out all the books already. Smart kid. Later, Syracuse asks Ondine to go fishing with him again, but she makes him promise that he's the only one who'll see her. He agrees. But as they're fishing, the fisherman patrol shows up, and Ondine has to duck and hide. Funny thing though, she steers the boat with her feet, and Syracuse kind of likes it. Apparently, fishermen have their own kind of kinks. Then she starts singing again, and just like magic, Syracuse pulls up tons of salmon, which is weird, because that's not how you catch salmon. The patrol guys get suspicious and check his net, but then they spot Ondine hiding. They're like, hey, there's a girl here. Syracuse just shrugs. Is that illegal? They say no, just unusual, and leave. At this point, Ondine realizes hiding is pointless. People are going to talk. So Syracuse takes her into town, and obviously everyone stares because she's drop-dead gorgeous. He takes her shopping, and a whole crowd gathers outside just watching. Small-town folks don't see someone like her every day. Later, Syracuse and Annie start connecting the dots. He found Ondine near Seal Rock, which totally checks out with the whole selkie theory. Back at the house, Ondine and Annie are hanging out, and Annie admits she doesn't know how to swim. Ondine, being part sea creature, maybe, offers to teach her, but mid-lesson, she suddenly sees something in the water, and that's when things start getting really intense. Ondine and Annie are by the water when Ondine suddenly sees something weird floating. She dives in, grabs it, and Annie gets all excited, asking, "Is that your seal coat?" Ondine just rolls with it, saying, "Yep, let's bury it so I can stay on land for 7 years." Annie, being the little detective she is, loves the idea, and they hide it together, making a secret pact not to tell anyone where it is. Later, Syracuse, Ondine, and Annie are out at sea when Annie explains her whole selkie theory to her dad. She's convinced that Ondine can grant wishes, but Ondine keeps insisting, "Girl, I'm not a selkie." Meanwhile, a mysterious dark-haired dude rolls into town, clearly looking for someone. Annie, determined to test Ondine's powers, jumps into the water. Of course, Ondine panics and dives in after her, proving to Annie that she's totally magical or just a good swimmer, but Annie ain't buying that. Later, when Syracuse takes Annie home, her mom tells her about the dark-haired guy asking around, but he's not using the name Ondine, which makes things even sketchier. Back at home, Ondine finally asks Syracuse, "Why do people call you Circus the Clown?" He explains that he used to drink a lot and do really dumb stuff. What made him stop? One day, he came home to find Annie passed out while her mom was completely wasted. That's when he decided that one of them had to stay sober, but his wife kicked him out. And since he was just a broke fisherman, the government wouldn't let him have custody of Annie. Tough break. After that emotional heart-to-heart, the two end up hooking up, because what else do you do after a sad story, right? The next day, Syracuse confesses at church again, saying that he's scared because Ondine has brought him luck, and he's starting to hope again. But he also feels like things are either going to end amazingly or be a total disaster. And guess who's waiting outside the church? Yep, the dark-haired guy. He asks Syracuse what he calls the woman he pulled from the ocean, but Syracuse isn't giving him any answers. Meanwhile, Ondine is asleep when she suddenly spots headlights outside. It's the dark-haired guy. Panicked, she runs away and hides. At the same time, Syracuse picks Annie up from dialysis but finds her house locked. And guess what? The keys are with her drunk mom at the bar. No choice but to leave Annie with her, even though he really doesn't want to. Syracuse gets home and finds the place completely trashed. Ondine is missing, and he freaks out searching for her. When he finds her, she tells him that the selkie husband Annie mentioned is real, and he's here to take her back. Syracuse is like, then just tell him to screw off. But she insists, it's not that simple. Trying to lighten the mood, Syracuse jokes, if you can grant wishes, why don't you just wish him away? But instead, Ondine wishes that Annie wouldn't be sick anymore. Syracuse, in turn, wishes that Ondine would stay with him forever. Meanwhile, Annie's mom is drunk driving her home, classic, and guess what? She crashes right into the dark-haired guy's car. Her boyfriend Alex gets thrown out the windshield and straight up dies. Syracuse and Ondine arrive at the scene, and Syracuse rushes to make sure Annie's okay. At the hospital, they get a crazy twist. Alex was an organ donor, and he's a perfect match for Annie. That means she can get a kidney transplant and finally be okay. While all this is happening, Ondine meets the dark-haired guy, and it turns out they were involved in something illegal together. So, not a selkie mystery, just some shady business going down. Later, Syracuse shows up at Alex's funeral. While all this is happening, Ondine meets the dark-haired guy, and it turns out they were involved in something illegal together. So, not a selkie mystery, just some shady business going down. Later, Syracuse shows up at Alex's funeral, where his ex-wife guilt trips him into drinking again. At first, he resists, but eventually he gives in and downs a whole bottle. She also tells him that while she's in a wheelchair, Annie should stay with him, but he has to get rid of Ondine because she brings good luck at first, but then everything turns to crap. And just like that, Syracuse is back to drinking. Syracuse is completely wasted, and for some messed up reason, he decides to dump Ondine on Seal Rock. He tricks her, pretending he's just grabbing another drink from the boat, but instead, he leaves her there alone. Ondine's like, at least let me say bye to Annie, but Syracuse won't hear it. He tells her, your kind and my kind don't belong together, and basically tells her to just stay there and sing to the seals. Oof. Next thing he knows, he wakes up drunk in a tree, yep, a tree, and the priest has to help him down. The priest gives him some real talk saying, you suck at accepting good things, man. Misery is easy, but happiness takes work. That hits Syracuse right in the feels. He goes to pick up Annie from the hospital, and the first thing she asks is, where's Ondine? He tells her that her selkie husband took her back, but Annie, being the little genius that she is, says she'll be back. There's still something of hers here. Syracuse is confused, but she won't spill the secret. Later, Annie is watching TV when suddenly a band starts performing a song, and bam! It's the same song Ondine sang on his boat. That's when it hits Syracuse like a truck. She's not a selkie, she's a real person. He rushes out to find her, heading straight for Seal Rock. When he gets there, he demands the truth. That's when Ondine finally tells her real story. She's actually a prisoner and a drug mule from Romania. The dark-haired guy? His name is Vladik, and he was with her when they got caught by the Irish Coast Guard. To escape, he forced her to take the drugs and swim away. She's a strong swimmer, but the Irish waves were brutal and she almost drowned, which is when Syracuse pulled her out of the water. Finally, he asks, what's your real name? She answers, Joanna. Plot twist time. When they get home, Vladic is already there. He and his sketchy sidekick threaten to kill Syracuse and Annie unless Joanna tells them where the drugs are. Joanna leads them to the place she buried the stash, but surprise, it's gone. That's when Annie finally speaks up. She admits that she moved it. Turns out, Annie didn't want anyone to find Joanna's seal coat because she thought it would mean she'd have to leave. Joanna promises, "I'll stay if you tell me where it is." Annie finally gives up the secret. It's in the lobster pot. So they all head to the boat, and just as Vladik reaches for the pot, Joanna makes her move. She yanks the rope from under him and his buddy, sending them straight into the water. And guess what? They can't swim. The ocean takes care of the rest. Afterward, the cops show up and take Joanna into custody. Meanwhile, Syracuse and Annie head home, safe but shaken. A little later, Syracuse is back at the church for another confession session. He tells the priest that Joanna is facing deportation since she's not an Irish citizen. But there's a loophole. If she marries an Irishman, she can stay. The priest smirks like, I wonder who that could be. Cut to Annie helping Joanna into a wedding dress while Syracuse puts on a fancy suit. The three of them get on a boat, heading toward the ceremony, while all the fishermen in town watch. And just like that, Syracuse kisses his ridiculously gorgeous sea creature wife-to-be. The end.